Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Love Notes from Laya podcast. I'm so happy today to be joined by the incredible Kim, who is an amazing space holder. She is an embodied activist. She is a yoga teacher, just an absolutely phenomenal movement, embodiment, rest teacher and practitioner, and also a beautiful human and friend of mine. So, very grateful to get to speak to you today and to get to share some wisdom with me and with all of the people here today. So, thank you for coming on and being here today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy to have this conversation because I know something that we've connected over, gotten to speak a lot about is rest. And I don't know how you're feeling today, but I'm feeling a bit tired. So just feels quite nice to have a bit of a moment to slow down and connect together and also talk about the importance of this beautiful time and space. So yeah, before we dive in, how are you? How are you feeling as we go into this conversation?
Yeah, just as you said, oh, let's have this time to slow down. I just literally felt this like, oh yeah, why don't we make it about, like slowing down and just
Mm.
being? So that allowed me to drop in a bit more just now. Yeah, there is a lot of excitement at the same time. Mm, yeah, I'm excited and grateful also to be part of your creations and how this is just a rippling back and forth and back and forth. And um, yeah, that's what's present right now.
Yeah, I love how our worlds keep intertwining. Yeah, I've had the privilege and the pleasure to be in your yoga classes, in your retreats, and also to peek into some of your offerings. So, just your energy brings this very relaxing energy to myself. So, it's just really lovely to find our meeting points and see how we also get to have this coexistence and this kind of exchange. I remember we did a collaborative event together on like the joy of pleasure and on pleasure and joy and the art of pleasure and joy. And yeah, I remember you did the movement part. I did a bit more of like the reflection and kind of the education bit also at the beginning. And so it was just such a nice riff. And I'm curious how this riff will continue to ensue. Well, since I started a bit opening up the whole idea of rest and radical rest, I'd love to just start a little bit there. I'm really curious how you got to that terminology, this whole idea of what radical rest is in itself, and how it became such a center pillar for yourself and in your life.
Yeah, let me start there. That again, like this exchange that's happening right now, I noticed that from you, I really receive this joy, pleasure, opening, um, and one of the ways to enter that, and I guess that's where I come in, and that's what started to excite me a lot, is the liminal space, like the space between wakefulness and sleep, but also the space between breaths, um, between thoughts. The more we start to slow down, the more spaces in between spaces open up. And
Mm.
there is this deep sense of awe, that I could just like simmer in forever. And one
Mm.
way of getting there for me is just by talking about it. Like, I'm like, wow, I could already I'm already in it, it feels like. Another way, and that's how, I started to get into it more, is through yoga nidra. So yogic sleep in a very, I don't know, westernized way. of saying it. It's so much more, of course. It's really about the void, the liminal space, that emptiness that is so full of potential that's not born yet, like a place where we can plant seeds,
Mm.
where we can let things die. It's a lot about, yeah, letting things die, to then see what new things want to arise. And yeah, and indeed, like this practice that I learned from Uma Dinsmore Thule. So she's one of my kind of main pillars, main teachers. Um, it helped me to tap into creativity, into more rest, into this awe. Also, getting a sense of subtle energies of, yeah, all these different sensations that we can experience when we just are. And where radical comes in, and I've had this conversation a few days ago with friends, and we were contemplating on, yeah, what's radical action, because indeed I want to link, or I want to make the link evident, because for me it's not about linking things, they're already connected. It's just about bringing awareness to that link. Yeah, it's really about our relationship to the word radical, and I feel that it is very tense. Or hearing that word, it's like, oh, okay, going to the extremes, doing things radically different. But the word itself is just root, like taking things by their root, and perhaps also in that way returning back to the deep, deep wisdom that's there, that we don't have to look elsewhere, but that we can just come back, reroute. And so radical rest is a practice for me, at least, of remembrance, of what's already there, trusting that as we rest, we remember that completion, completedness, wholeness that we are, and move from a place that allows us to listen before we act, before we react, and transitioning from reaction to actually listening and responding. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the connection of a radical with that root because to me, it's also about remembering what's important. It seems like in society, we've like completely reshuffled the things that are we should be valuing and actually dedicating so much of our time to. And that so much has to do with like productivity and doing things and being out there. When actually, I think about this, I also read the book on radical intimacy. And yeah, I think of intimacy, I think of rest. And it's like these are actually like center pillars of our lives that we've are actually supposed to really be up here, but we've just somehow allowed those to fall. And I also like this whole idea of radical as a way of being like, no, let's remember that these are true, deep center pillars within our own life. So, yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for explaining your way of thinking of radicalness in it.
And if I may add to that, because you just touched on that as well. There is another important person in that scene, in the radical rest scene. Her name is Trisha Hersey, and she wrote the book Rest as Resistance. And she even says that rest is, and I agree, rest, sleep, it's a human right. It's kind of part of what makes dignity, safety, belonging. Yeah, it's just part of that. So to know that throughout history, colonialization especially, some groups of people have been deprived of that essential human right, or just being right. Yeah, that's also an interesting lens to reclaim that right to rest.
Yeah.
And pleasure, same.
Mhm. Beautiful. I love these recommendations. I definitely need to write them down for afterwards. I want to go a little bit back to what you were talking about, that space in between, because I think there's so much magic there as well. And I love how you talked about the space between each breath, and between each moment. And this feels really salient because I was having a conversation. I just closed a cycle with one of my clients, and we were talking about the importance of finding these moments in between. And maybe we were thinking about it more so from this bigger picture perspective of, okay, you just did this really big project and you went on this really big, like deep 3 month journey, or however long, whatever journey it is that people are going through. And then we find ourselves, or I find myself, and I see a lot of people that I'm gravitated towards finding themselves wanting to immediately go for the next goal, or wanting to immediately go for the next thing. And actually, what we were working on and creating space for is, what about creating space to just be between one goal and the next goal, or between one big project and the next project? Can we create this space to really just be? Because when we're in the middle of working towards something, and when we're in the middle of this growth and journeying, we're in the midst of it. We're working towards some goals and we're making things happen, but we're not truly creating space to be. And it's in these moments in between, when we're not really working towards anything, that we can really just soak it all in. I also think of integration, because integration is such a main big thing. Like, we can be learning and growing, but if we're not actually taking the time to integrate, then are we deeply embodying the learnings and the teachings and the growth? And yeah, it's become very present to me, the importance of these moments in between. And I'm curious, from your perspective, how do you cultivate these moments in between, in a small lens from these kind of day to day moments, but also in a bigger picture, like these bigger journeys, these like 3 months, 6 months, year long journeys? How do you cultivate liminal space between?
Mm. Um, disclaimer, I'm human. um, yeah, you're catching me in a phase of life where I am definitely in the doing and the creating, and then and I think you resonate with that there's so much pleasure in the creation as well.
Mm.
And the tilting point towards consuming creation is so fragile. Yeah, so I'm definitely navigating that right now. What helps me is to, like, on a small scale, small level, um, yeah, to actually like notice the excitement, the whatever is on the physical somatic level, to really see like, wow, there is a drive. What's beneath that? Is there exhaustion? Because often it's kind of this pull of two different parts in me that need different things, this push and pull. And how can I honor both? How can I do that? And how I do that is actually through taking these 15, 20 minutes of yoga nidra. And I refuse to call it power nap because it refutes the whole purpose of it all, to me at least. Yeah, it's not about recharging my battery so I can continue functioning. It's more the, now I am dedicating time to this quality that I want to cultivate in my life as well.
Mm.
Now I'm giving space to this exhaustion that's also there, and that
Yeah.
I also want to acknowledge. I think it's a lot about acknowledgement, of all these contradictions that we hold in ourselves, and giving that space, to giving space to those contradictions, and by that also growing capacity so that we can move through life, with the awe and with the grief, with all of that. Yeah.
Love that. And I don't think I had thought of yoga nidra in that way before. So I feel like you're opening up a lot of lightning bolts in my own mind of a different perspective through which we can see yeah, little moments I'm thinking of like Shavasana, right? I may not be someone who like actively practices yoga nidra yet, but I'm still a yoga teacher. And I think of the moments of Shavasana and the importance of cultivating really deeply those like 5, 10, 15 minutes where you're creating that space for nothingness and you're creating that space to give voice to that exhaustion and also to give voice to whatever's inside of you. Like I really see it more the way I experience these moments in between is it's a way to really listen and to be like, what is actually going on in the surface and what emotions are stirring and what just came up. And I get so much inspiration. I'm curious, like, do you find those moments in between as really your moment to slow down, or do you also experience like a bunch of bursts of inspirations? Because I find that that's where I get a lot of ideas as well.
So really depending on the state I'm in. I remember when I did my teacher training, I think it was 14 days long or so, and the first week, every single nidra, I could not remember a single thing they said. I just like went in, did, slept, and then when it was time to come back out, I came out. And we had this theme, or yeah, there was a big theme in this whole group around that and people were getting frustrated and
Mm.
like not getting the good stuff out of it. And that's also funny because yes, we can be talking, and I love talking about the benefits of this practice. And at some point, it also defeats the purpose if we talk about the benefits, because it's then again like, what can I take, what can I extract from this practice that's beneficial for me, rather than, okay, I'm going into the unknown. I'll just trust that the coming 20 minutes are going to give me what I need. And
Mm.
that's the way I like to enter the practice, like just trusting that it'll give me what I need, um, and what I'm ready to receive in that moment, which life always does it anyways. Um, yeah, so most of the time, honestly, I just dip and I'm like, whoa, that was that reset, that yeah, like revival almost was very needed. And there is a sense of freshness, of being newly born in some ways, and just seeing the world in a different way after that practice, that then allows me to work on things, or yeah, dive into my creations in a different way. So it could very well be that in that space, and it's not only it could, I think it's for certain, in that space a lot of things are reorganizing that I'm not aware of, and I've let go of the need to know what's happening in there. It's just happening, and then I continue. Yeah.
Were you always so open to the unknown, or was that something you had to grow into? Because I see so much comfort in you in being like, let me just step into this and see what arises. But yeah, how did you get there? Was it always like that?
I'm gonna bring astrology in. As a Pisces, I think I do have a tendency. Like I just like to swim in the unknown waters and be odd, and yeah, just wanting to feel the magic in every moment. For me, the shadow side has definitely been like the practice of discernment, of learning whom to trust, because yeah, definitely, like as we open into the unknown, anyone can say, I am the North Star, follow me.
Mm.
So that's been, and it still is, a learning. And the unknown has been getting more and more comfortable for me, for sure, especially in the last 6 months. And it's because I continue to face fears that I know are conditioned, that I know keep me small. Like scarcity is a big one, urgency as well. And yeah, internalized, what it's not only capitalism, but internalized beliefs that come from family, from how we are supposed or how we've learned to live in society. Um, and I love the discomfort. I think it's again like very Piscean thing. I at the end of my life, this life here, um, I would like the one thing I really would like to be with is that I have experienced as many facets and colors of life as
Mm.
possible. And that only happens if we also allow ourselves to feel the the depths, the darkness. Um, yeah, and the unknown holds a lot of that as well. Um, and then, yeah, through the darkness comes the light, and yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I, it makes me, first of all, feel very in awe of you and your ability to step into discomfort and like that pull towards it and toward the unknown, right? Because I completely agree with you. I talk a lot about like the comfort zone and pushing yourself out there because I do think that's where growth really happens. And there's so much beauty in showing to yourself, like, okay, I can keep like expanding and kind of opening, and what beauty and what pain and what joys lie out of what I've, this circle, this bubble I've created for myself. But I also know that we're kind of weird people in that way, in the best of ways. But I don't think I think there are a lot of humans out there who also feel similarly, but I also know that there's this deep fear around the unknown. And I don't know if this comes just like from the inside and how we are, or if it's this kind of outside fear that then kind of trickles into our own body. But how do you support, or what words of encouragement do you give to someone who feels afraid of that unknown or of that discomfort? How do you help them walk into a place that may feel scary and completely unknown?
Yeah. I really like to remind myself and everyone else um, of the pacing, the very, very intelligent pacing of the body or of the whole system that we are. And that there are probably a lot of reasons as to why we've refused to go into the learning zone, or however you want to call it, into that unknown. And that for this moment, that's okay. And in this like normalizing, acknowledging what's there, something then softens. I've come to see in my clients, something softens, and this kind of, okay, nothing's wrong. I see that I'm scared of this. Let me be with this fear. And I've had this practice with another teacher of mine, Stacey Haynes. She's amazing. She wrote the book Politics of Trauma, and she was having this exercise where you make a fist with one hand and you try to open it with the other.
Mm.
And I mean, yeah, you can do that now. Like, it's kind of this, oh wow, suddenly both of my hands are against each other. And it's like so effortful, and there's tension building up inside of me.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, why is this not opening up? And then the second round, like, the longer we do it, the more intense it can get, probably. The second round was really, okay, this fist is still wanting to stay closed. So the fear of the unknown, right? The fear of the unknown. I don't want to step into the unknown. And then there's just the witnessing. And it's just like, okay, let me support you in that closing. And what happens is the fist softens and the bracing softens. So I really like that approach, that giving it space, giving it time. And there we are again, like, what is space? What is time? Can
Mm.
we, bring in that breather? Yeah.
It's like compassion piece is so powerful in how we can meet ourselves and meet our bodies and our minds. Like they work so hard. And I feel like we're constantly pushing it to just do more and more. And it's a very powerful analogy, the difference of like pushing versus just being and creating and softening and holding. Yeah. Are there any specific rituals that you do or ways that you connect to this softening for yourself in your own body? What does that look like for you? That holding of compassion?
Yeah, I have a mirror in front of my altar. So one thing is having an altar and just sitting with whatever I'm devoting myself in this period of life. Um, yeah, and just looking at myself in the mirror. And there are moments where I need something that I wish someone else could give me right now. Um, yeah, this kind of longing to the outside, and then it's really just about acknowledging. And I love to hug myself. Tears, tears are my friends. Um, yeah, and this kind of seeing myself in the mirror really helps as well. And then after that, if I still feel like actually now bringing someone in contact with me, whether it be a human or going out into nature, then that's kind of the next step. But really seeing like, wow, how many resources do we have in ourselves? Can we remind ourselves that we are complete with the permission, of course, and the reminder that we're all interconnected. So yes, go ahead and seek the support of friends, family, whatever. Yeah.
I'm curious about your altar. I'm also an altar girly. And yeah, how do you cultivate it? How do you create it? What thoughts go into it when you're creating this space for yourself? And at what moments do you see yourself pulled towards it?
Hmm. Well, recently I redid it. It used to be an accumulation of things since I lived in Amsterdam, which was 2 years ago, 2.5.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it was just like this collection of memories, of symbols, and of prayers. Like every now and then I would either start to draw something, and then that's kind of the visual that I meditate on, that I am with. And then recently Rachel Maddox, I started to create an altar for really the frequency that I want to step into more.
Mm.
And that's changed my relationship with how I create that space, that sacred space. I have, and also with talks like these ones, I always have my little I don't know, scarf situation like around me or with me. And that's kind of also when I sit there, I do have it with me. So it's all about opening a portal and just saying, okay, I'm going to step in there. I'm going to sit. I'm going to light candles, trusting that words are frequency as well. They're just ripples that go through the air, only just ripples. But yeah, that matters already. Just a lot of intentionality and the mystery, and again the unknown. Like we don't know what we meet when we sit and are. Yeah, that's that's what I do every now and then.
Yeah. I love the visual of the frequency that you're trying to step into. I've had an altar for many years now, and I felt quite disconnected from it the past few months. And it almost feels too crowded. I think there's too much going on in my altar, and it's made me, I still go and sit with it, And I find it more as a place to like go and like pull a card, or especially when I go into sessions or something that feels very important that I want to hold a sacred space for. It's like light the candle. I like to connect with the different elements, right? The wind and the air and the fire and the water, and to just have everything connected. It feels a way to connect what's happening in my little world with nature also in a greater way by connecting with the elements. But something has felt a bit, um, yeah, like the connection is not as clear between me and my altar at the moment. And I feel like you've given me already a new way of thinking about it where I'm quite excited to go sit with it and be like, okay, what do, because so much of being able to step into the person that you want to be or step into the frequency that you want to be also means letting go of certain things, versions of you that maybe you have a lot of love for and like have supported you, but are not no longer helping you in stepping into the frequency that you want to step into or to be the person that you want to be. So it's just making me reflect on the need to let go of several things that I have on my altar at the moment and simplifying it, making it really feel conversational between where I am and where I want to be and what I really need to help me get there. And that doesn't mean completely like letting go of the things that I have. Like they can come back at a different moment. There's like a special little spot that I can put them in, but it's really about honoring that new version, that frequency that I want to step into. So I know I'm taking that with me from our conversation already.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, with the simplicity also comes a reminder, because what I sometimes also hear when I like hear people say, "Oh yeah, altar and stuff," it's like, "Oh my God, do I now also have to have an altar, or do I now also have to go with the elements, or and just taking also here the pressure off." And like you said, what resonates in this phase in my life, and knowing for me, knowing that I'm going to move, there is an anxiety around, like, oh my God, what do I do with this part in my life that is actually taking up physical space? And so I feel like, yeah, even if it's just how you like dressing up, having that piece of cloth that you know that is dedicated for stepping into a space, a sacred space, lighting one candle, like, even, yeah, I think that's going to be something that I do, that I have a lighter with me, a candle, an incense. Incense is not even necessary, but like, how can we simplify it so that we do it rather than saying, oh, I don't have all of this, so now I can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. I'm not in my usual space right now. And so for me, it's like I don't have my altar. I don't have the things that I would usually do to kind of help me get into that space. But I did have incense. And so, for example, like the one thing I was able to do before jumping on this call was being like, oh, I'm going to light my incense. And it was a patchouli and musk, which patchouli is a scent I really connect with and have connected with for many, many many years from way back when I used to live in San Francisco. So it already helps get me into this really beautiful space. And I think a lot of us are on the go who are in this world and in this field. And it's also about finding these little micro moments and micro tendings. And even though I, did something super small here, like it was just one thing, but it made me feel connected to all the things that are waiting for me at home and the bigger ritual that you can do to help yourself get into that space of love and nourishment of the self.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to touch base a little bit on this whole idea of activism and embodied activism, because I remember the retreat we went on together, well, that I went to, that you were a space holder in. It was all about really supporting activists and creating this space for people to self nourish and tend and almost like reconnect a little bit to like, what are we working on and how do we want to move forward? And yeah, I remember feeling so lit up after that experience, but also so nourished. And I'm curious how that's evolved because it's been a very long time since we were in that space. That was 3 years ago or so, but I still see you using a lot of this like embodied activism and making space for activists to nourish. Yeah, how do you approach supporting activists themselves, and what does embodied activism for yourself also mean?
Yeah. So maybe I'll start with the last bit, like what does it mean to me? Um, I I've always been with the tension of, and perhaps you resonate with it, of like there is something going on with the world that feels very wrong, that feels, yeah, like something is dying, which death is very welcome.
Mm,
And knowing that, yeah, we're part in that. um, there's always been the question of what's my role in it, and how can I support, and also having a part in me say that I'm not doing enough.
yeah.
um, and what I've come to notice with friends, so I would say that I myself am not so much in the social movement activist spaces, and I would love to go into it more, especially into those that are open for how does this look like if we connect it with somatics, with embodiment.
Mm,
But I have very close people around me that are very often and full time in those spaces, and it just keeps coming up, that exhaustion piece and the I'm still not doing enough, basically operating from the same systems and narratives that they or that we try to transform. And every time I've stepped into that fire, because it is incredibly, like, it's activating. Activism is activating. It's
yeah.
fire, and I'm standing up for my rights, for other people's rights. I want to change. I want to change the world. Again, there's also this, but that's another conversation, but this grandiose kind of who are we to save the world narrative. Like, what is your piece? What's the piece that you can transform? That's definitely something I'm sitting with, because I've been with that tension of feeling the pressure and also the desire to go into activation, to transform, to change, and then to notice that the should and have tos and musts are louder than the care that I actually hold. And that's where embodiment came in, where it feels like, from the perspective of embodied activism, we practice again and again to center ourselves around the care. Like, hold on, yes, all of this is happening. We could go into anger, and again, that's so welcome. We could go into anger and go against, or we say, whoa, this is all happening. Let me sense how this is affecting my system or the group system. And let us orient back to the care piece. What are we caring for? We care for the ecosystem, whatever it is that social movements or organizations are caring for, or individuals are caring for. Let us orient back to that piece and go back into listening, go back into responding from that place. So that's kind of the intention that I hold with the wording. Also wanting to make it just very visible that these two belong together. I've also noticed that I'm at a point where I might drop the coining of the words because um yeah, it's for me it makes me quite sad that we have to highlight the embodiment part in all the things we do,
Mm.
um, because we're embodied, like we are already in flesh. Um, yeah, so it's kind of also a mirror of how far we've gotten. Um, that now everything has to have the label embodiment or somatics to highlight that this is the approach. Yeah. But that's where we're at. um, yeah. Yeah, I guess that's part of the
Mm.
answer. I don't know if there were other pieces.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain degree, I understand where you're coming from of wanting to drop the embodiment piece, but I feel like societally and structurally, like we're still living so deeply inside of our own heads. And I think people continuously still need those reminders to drop into the body because, yeah, maybe it's something that I would say maybe you've almost gotten much deeper in the practice than I have. And I'm sure there's many people who have much less so still gotten into the practice of like dropping out of here and dropping into here. And yeah, uh, I like to see it. I guess that's where I'm coming from. And maybe this
Yeah.
is me just putting in my personal opinion, but it gives it a different lens. It really does because it almost gives me this sense of like calmness. And I love how you speak about activism being this really activating energy, right? There's this like fire, this like lighting up. There's deep care, but it's care transmuted into momentum and energy to want to act versus this embodiment piece does feel really grounded. And going back to the whole idea of like radical is rooted, right? It's giving this like, I am here, but I am fighting for what I believe in. And um, I do think that that's world changing. Like wanting to change the world can just mean wanting to change our little world, right? Like that we have enough people and spaces and things within us that we can change. And we talk a lot about like the ripple of impact and the ripple of change. And I don't know, our world is enough, and our world as in just like the people around us and the spaces that we inhabit and the way that we do. And I think that we do have the power to really change that by just being with ourselves and finding that rootedness, that calmness, but then also moving forward from the things that we do care about because we do need to realign with like the values that we care and push those forward. So,
Mm.
yeah, I think that was a little tangent, but I think that there is a very responsible way of changing the world. And I think a lot of that comes by just like making our world feel smaller, by just making it feel like who is around us and what is around us, and what values do I want to bring deeper, and how can I allow those to expand into just my little circle of impact and my circle of community, and that will spread outwards. But yeah, um,
Yeah.
that allows me to then connect much deeper into like gratefulness and gratitude and appreciation because I can then also see the change that I make because it's a very deep like conversation between what I'm doing, the people that I'm around, the things that I'm moving with, and the actions that I take. Like you can see how one thing can impact the other and how uh, evolvement happens, and then you can feel grateful for the way in which you're channeling your own energy. And yeah, I know we've spoken about joy, and a lot of like my work connects with joy, but I just think so much of what joy really is being able to experience that appreciation for every single moment and for everything that we do, and that gratitude and being like, oh, I'm so glad to be able to do what I am doing, and that in itself brings me that joy. And I think, yeah, changing the world through that world-changing vision that can be smaller but feels embodied and true, can really take us towards. So, yeah, anyways, I'm an advocate for the word of embodied and continuing to keep that to circle us back. But I do understand the frustration of being like, well, why does it need to be in front of everything? And yeah,
I definitely agree that, yeah, in the phase in life that we are, or like that society is, that the world is, we need the word to highlight that there is another way. What also just came up when you shared is definitely the regeneration part, that it gives the permission, the wording for me gives the permission, one second, to see how you want to live activism, that not everyone has to be in the front, embodying the fire, that there are other elements that we can embody. So what element do you want to embody in that scene? Because we all hold responsibility, that for sure, and especially us who have more privileges have with that also more responsibility, and that can be from a place of joy. The moment something feels like we're advocating, or what I see in those movements is they're advocating for the more beautiful world, and yet, yeah, the embodiment piece. Like, how would it be to already embody that? Because it is here if you sense into it.
yeah,
I think the organization within the communities would look very, very different. The conversations, the interpersonal, intrapersonal relations would just transform and ripple out. And then having that organize and be bigger movements, that is possible for sure as well. So I'm really curious where that's going to take us, because there are people who are doing this work on bigger scales already. Yeah. Yeah, very curious.
yeah, that's really powerful. And I think it's a really beautiful place to start to kind of close the conversation and bring us back into, because it allows us to shine the mirror back on ourselves to say, well, how do we want to show up and in what way, right? Everyone can have their own unique way of showing up for the things that they care about, but they all come together, and it's about finding different reflections. And I hope for the listeners out there that they found something that they saw themselves reflected in, and that felt like a good way for them to start to show up in a way that feels natural and organic and needed and necessary and exciting and just authentic. Because at the end of the day, the best change that we can do is the change that feels authentic to us. And I'm so happy that you were able to find a way to show up in these spaces that felt authentic to you. And that's something I've always admired about how you show up, and the way that you hold space is, it's truly and deeply authentic. And so your medicine and your magic, it just comes very organic because it feels so deeply ingrained into you and who you are. Mm.
Thank you.
So, yeah, before we wrap up, how can people find you? I know you have some nidra already up there as well in the world that people can tap into. So, if anyone resonated to that or wants to experience one of your beautiful transmissions for the world, how can they find you and where are those?
I think the best way is to subscribe to my newsletter. In that way, you have access to all of the different things. Otherwise, you'll find me on YouTube. It's all under the same handle, Kim Joanna, double N. And Substack as well. I also just started a podcast inspired by you. So, this is just going.
Mm.
Yes. Yeah. So yoga nidras are for sure on YouTube. There's also a way to skip all the ads, just saying, because it's the most terrible thing to be lying down and then suddenly an ad kicks in. So I linked those also in the descriptions there. Yeah, and apart from that, my musings on Substack. I have a new thing coming up, which is also free. It's called the Permission, and there's going to be monthly permissions, recorded explorations, about 15 minutes long, that you can just replay as often as you want during that month. And then there's different ways to dive deeper, one-on-one. I also have occasional group containers depending on the themes that are alive in me right now. So yeah, just stay tuned by subscribing to the newsletter.
Amazing. Well, go check those out. And yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Let us know if anything resonated with you that you heard, any words, any practices in the comments. We'll both get to see those and celebrate you with us. And Kim, thank you for being here. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for sharing your magic and your words. And I know there will be much more to come from here. This was a beautiful start and a beautiful beginning. So thank you.
Thank you, Laya. What a pleasure.
Lots and lots of love from Laya.